This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Thursday, May the 22nd. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly, and David Williams. He's produced the program. Let's get at it. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So you just heard Sarah Strickland reading the newscast. Of course, big Blue Jays fan. Last night, the Jays, what offensive juggernaut all of a sudden. Put up 14 runs against the San Diego Padres, one of the best teams in the National League. Now, to that end, the Padres did the Jays a lot of favors, booting the ball around like the bad news Bears there last night for a while. But anyway, and I move on to another staffer and a fan of the NBA, Dave Williams. For the second time, a Canadian is the MVP of the National Basketball Association. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander plays for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Absolutely one of the best players in the world, no doubt about it. So Steve Nash, of course, won back-to-back MVPs. He's in the Hall of Fame. And now SGA is the NBA MVP. So he won the scoring title. He played on the Thunder, had the best record of the season, the largest margin of victory in history, and that's 12.9 points per game on average they beat their opponents. Averaged 32.7 points. 6.4 assists, 5 rebounds per game. The Thunder were 68-14. So it's the first guard to win the MVP since James Harden in 2018. And that makes it 7 straight years where a non-American won the MVP in the NBA. So anyway, congratulations to him. He's a beauty to watch. And of course, quick mention of Team Canada back at it at the World Championships today versus Denmark. And into the playoff round we go. We got a nice club over there. See what we can pull off. All right, more serious matters. So the story there a couple of weeks ago or whenever it was about a lady who has faked her nursing credentials using an alias, working in the healthcare system, then put on probation. Lo and behold, she pops up as a personal care home attendant. And the question then is the vetting associated with people working with some of the most vulnerable in society, in a hospital, in a care home. So not good, to say the very least. Moving on to credentials, and credentials being verified, this time in the teaching profession. So we know there's always a struggle to fill some spots inside the province's K-12 system. And this one person has written me a fairly lengthy email. I'm going to try to digest it and break it down a little bit. Recent immigrant to Canada, it leads off, but has permanent residency status as far back as November, and after receiving the right to work, started the process to try to get his teaching credentials approved to be able to work in that profession in this province. He's a special education teacher. He's got experience teaching around the world, United States, South Korea, Nigeria, Japan, and Germany. Never had any difficulty getting his credentials recognized. There's job openings right this very moment in and around the Clareville area where he'd like to work. So apparently we use a third-party organization called Worldwide Education Services. He paid him $450 for his first check of his credentials. Then, of course, the postal strike happened. He wasn't allowed to submit his credentials digitally, so had to have hard paper copies. They lost the transcripts, back to the drawing board, paid him another $450, still waiting. So whether or not this is an organization that could be used or should be used or has the integrity required, this is a problem. Is it not possible for, similar like for the nursing profession, for the college to do that work? Is it not possible for the Department of Education or some entity at government to take this on? We know we need the healthcare pros. We know we need the teaching professionals. And yet this person, $900 later, 6 months later, still waiting to get approved. An expert in his field. There's something seriously broken here. You know, I know there's always an opportunity for a third-party entity, this private sector company called Worldwide Education Services, to do some of the legwork. But is it not possible to replicate some of their work, even if he has to provide teaching transcripts and diplomas and certification and how it's been used in all the countries that I mentioned, where he has indeed taught in the world of special education? So I think that concept is a big one. And also regarding the whole brain drain. we've got an issue here potentially in the tech and innovation sector, but the Americans, I think, are suffering a little bit of brain drain and an excess from their country, academia, scientists, healthcare professionals. I'll throw this out there one more time for your consideration. People bemoaned the decision made to open up a economic-related office in Boston, which I think is probably a good idea, but I think we should really seriously add to it recruiting of healthcare professionals. In other provinces, they're doing it, and aggressively so, whether it be Ontario and notably British Columbia. They've turned what was once months long of a process for credentials to be approved, to get on the floor, to do the work. Now they're turning it around in a few days. So I think we'd probably be well served to do exactly that. What do you think? All right. See another story in the news about weapons in school. And as the husband of a teacher, and of course with all of the children in school, these stories are extremely troubling. There's been reports of students bringing weapons to school in an effort to defend themselves. But of course we know full well that there's going to be students bring weapons to school to be the aggressor. Yesterday the police investigated and arrested a 15-year-old who was found to be in possession of a airsoft handgun. It's not a traditional firearm handgun, but it can be a prohibited weapon based on muzzle velocity and a variety of other factors. Whether or not this one qualifies in that prohibited category, I don't know. But it can do some serious damage. It's powered by CO2 cartridges. So I had to read a little bit about it because I don't know much about it, to be honest with you. But it can be a very dangerous weapon. So, you know, we talk about putting weapon identification systems at healthcare facilities, and I've got a couple of people who are pretty consistently talking about the worries they have with their children and or grandchildren in the province of schools, specifically about the weapons that we have heard about many, many times. So I suppose it's probably an opportunity before the school year runs out, or for Trent Langdon's term as the president of the NLTA runs out, to come back on and see if we make any advancements on the concept of violence in schools. And yes, violence can have a pretty wide-ranging definition. I don't necessarily include the word violence into someone saying your mother dresses you funny. It can be absolutely hurtful to your feelings. It can keep you from wanting to go to school. But when we have physical acts of violence and or weapons in school, and the frequency with which law enforcement is called, I think there's still a big conversation to be had, because just imagine the impact that has on the entire student body. The anxiety that we already hear about, the worries that children have getting up and going to school, period. And then it's the ability to absorb the curriculum, whether we talk about whether or not you have a full belly and or you're on the receiving end of what we call bullying, even though that's become an unfortunate catch-all, because plenty of examples in school is not bullying, it's crime, it's criminal behavior. You want to talk about it? Let's go. Stick with education. Let's go to Memorial University. So we know that a few years ago, 2022, when the government said they were not going to transfer $68.4 million to the university to keep the tuition freeze in place, and the outcome was obvious. Cost for tuition for a full course load, domestic students, $2,550 to $6,000 for Canadians, $20,000 for international students. Also, a 4% increase until 2026. There had been money, around $14 million, that was aimed at maintaining the tuition where it is today. Now, apparently, as written in the Memorial's Gazette on Tuesday by the new president, Jennifer Lokash, or by the interim president, Jennifer Lokash, they're going to use money that was intended to maintain the tuition for other purposes. $3.9 million for contract teachers, and then the rest to what they call enhanced efforts on student recruitment and retention, business transformation efforts, critical technology improvements, I'm sure Memorial University, as we all know, seriously strapped for cash. Even though the province transfers about $400 million to the university annually, it's about 70% of their operating budget. People can talk about administrative bloat or whatever you want to talk about. But when the government says, you know, we would hope that the university used that money to control tuition. But of course, Memorial University, with its autonomy, is able to make decisions based on what they see the needs. But then an argument made, and I could only barely hear because I was busy here this morning, but one of the representatives of the Canadian Federation of Students said this, and it's an excellent point. The government can indeed earmark money for specific things, and gave examples. $70 million in the most recent budget to address infrastructure deficit. So they did it there. So how's the argument hold any water that they can't do it regarding tuition? Now, we set ourselves up for disaster, I would suggest, by keeping the tuition freeze in place for over 2 decades, because inevitably, at some point in the future, whether it be with maintenance deficits or otherwise, we're always going to see some sort of increase, as opposed to an annual predictable minimal increase. Here we are, $2,550 to $6,000. It's still competitive tuition when we look across the country, no doubt about that. But if the end result is a trend in a reduction of domestic enrollment, specifically people from this province, that's going to have a long-term problem attached directly to it. So if government can earmark, whether it be campus renewal fees and or infrastructure deficit, but they say they can't do it on tuition controls, not so sure. You want to talk about it? Let's go. All right, let's stick with money and tracking costs. When the story broke initially in the Globe and Mail that in the course of 5 months, the province had spent, $35.6 million on private travel nurse agencies. All right. So then we found out that in 2022, the Newfoundland Labrador Health Services spent $18.4 million on travel nurses. The following year, around $90 million. Now, when asked about how much money we're spending on travel nurses now, the answer was, I don't know, basically. So here's the trick. Like everything else regarding government policy, unless you have to have a way to measure success or failure, then we are just flying blind. And in this case, I suppose and I hope that the numbers will be forthcoming for the opposition party who asked the question, but we have to know how much money we're spending on travel nurses. We were told there was going to be a reduction in the reliance on travel nurses back to pre-pandemic levels, but if we don't know how much we're spending, how can we possibly know? Maybe, just maybe, the minister simply didn't have the information available upon questioning yesterday, and let's hope that they can bring forward that information so that we know whether or not we're on the right track. You can do an awful lot in the world of hired by the public, working for the public sector with $90 million annually. I'm sure it's been reduced somewhat since then, but it'd be great to have an actual update to that number, because that was a real thorn in the public side. You know? And then there was the concept of, I don't want to close an emergency room, I don't want to close a ward, whether it be former Minister Tom Osborne or now current Minister Crystal Lynn Howell saying, I'm not going to be responsible for closing a clinic because we don't have appropriate resources of a travel nurse available. No one disagrees with that. Of course we don't want to close anything, but we simply need to know how much we're spending so that we have an idea as to whether or not government's strategy is working or not. Anyway, let's keep going. Self-referrals. This is probably a very good idea. The mortality rates associated with a variety of cancers, colon and breast cancer, particularly in this province, way outside the national rate. So let's see. Compare ourselves to the rest of Canada. The rates are 50% higher, and the mortality rate almost 100% higher when we talk about colon cancer. We're also way ahead of the national average of breast cancer. But now, through the province's My Health NL app, you'll be able to self-refer for colon and breast cancer screening. We know when they changed the breast cancer age for screening to the recommendation of 40, that a lot of things changed. So women ages 40 to 74 can now self-refer for breast cancer screening. People aged 50 to 74 can now self-refer for colon cancer screening. All a very good thing. It makes all the sense in the world. It will all depend on whether or not people take the opportunity to do exactly that. So there's around 131,000 people now registered through the My Health NL platform, and there's another 40,000 through the app. That's good news. One question that I think comes to mind is that there's a reported backlog anyway in the screening world. So how will more and more self-referrals add to that particular backlog? I do think that this is absolutely the right thing to do insofar as the ability to self-refer. But how is it going to work with the current state of the numbers of people already waiting for screening or results, what have you? And of course, you can go to your app and get the results of the screening and imaging reports and lab results and other links and all the rest of it. So probably a very good idea here, given the fact that we have the highest rates of those cancers in the country and the mortality rates are absolutely well above the national average. So good idea. Let's hope that it has the intended outcome. Another one here, head scratcher. Apparently the chief of family medicine in Central only spends about 4 days a month in the province, has privileges at a clinic in Ontario, we're told is now on a locum in the Northwest Territories, but Barry Pettin, the opposition critic on this front, saying, would this be tolerated inside the overpass versus the way it's being tolerated outside the overpass? And apparently some of the virtual care options being afforded to the folks in Lewisport are being provided by a clinic where this particular doctor has privileges and may indeed be offering some of that virtual care. I think it's absolutely fair concern as to someone playing such a critically important role, number one, doesn't live here, and number two, is only here 4 days a month. Probably not good enough. An answer to that question didn't make a whole lot of sense yesterday, but that's just one of those examples where people in leadership positions of authority in some of the most important arenas in the province, you really need to be here. You certainly need to be here more than 4 days a month. So that's a concern brought forward by the opposition yesterday, and we can take that on as well. A couple of very quick ones. We spoke yesterday about the fact that in many rural communities, and Lloyd Parrott, the member for Terra Nova, brought forward a concern about when you call 911, you're asked for your area code, or pardon me, your postal code. Postal code. So this particular issue he was bringing forward, the person wasn't in a community, was on the highway, is one thing. And for many smaller communities who may indeed share a postal code, obviously that's not good enough, and first responders need to be dispatched to the proper address right away. Then thankfully, helpful information came from a caller, Rick. So we've talked about the need for civic addresses in smaller communities for years. And apparently, to integrate that exercise with 911 emergency services, there's a kit available. So whether you're a concerned citizen, whether or not you're a municipal leader in an incorporated municipality and or a local service district, if you contact Emergency Services Branch and the 911 NL Bureau Inc., there's a kit. They send it out to you. It's a step-by-step how to incorporate civic addresses, which will automatically, upon return, be integrated right into the system itself. I didn't know that was a thing, so I'm really glad that Rick informed me of it yesterday. But for every municipality that does not have the concept of civic addresses baked in, apparently there's an easy step-by-step kit that could be provided to you, and you'll help walk you through it, and then right back into this dispatch world so we can get this right, thankfully and finally. All right, a couple of quickies. How are we doing on the phone, Dave? I feel like I could go all day, but I'd prefer to speak with you. All right. So, Marcus Hicks. Unfortunately for me, I kind of know who he is, given the fact he was a volleyball coach and my young fellow was involved in volleyball. And, of course, he was a teacher. He's facing, over a couple hundred acts of sexual violence. Now, we can get into the deceit that was used and the evil that was perpetrated, at this point allegedly, but we're now told that he plans on pleading guilty in his next court appearance. So that sounds like obviously there's been a plea deal struck. Then you add in the Tony Humby issue. Delayed, again, it's going to be a choppy, extended trial. And of course, his buddy, Bruce Escott, has already pled guilty and in an agreed statement of facts said that he and Tony Humby did exactly what they're accused of. So on top of that, those charges and what he's facing and what he's allegedly done, I'm going to throw it back out there again because I think, sometimes you say, public inquiry, and maybe, just maybe, it's not necessarily required, but in this case, I think it probably is. We talk about youth who are very vulnerable, whether living in a group home or otherwise, and we need to know what the role of the law enforcement, the department responsible, the child and youth advocate, and others, what they know and what was not done to protect other young people into the future. Humby's been on the radar of the RNC for decades, and yet, here we are now, facing all of those couple hundred plus, 72 charges. There's also a charge of human trafficking. It's only the third time in the province that's been laid. None of the other two have made it to the end of a trial. But I think there's probably a lot more we need to understand. As opposed to the role of the department, I think we also have to understand the role of law enforcement when it comes to protection of vulnerable youth and youth in general. What do you think? Do you want to talk about it? All right. A couple of quick ones. And talk about people who are vulnerable. Just one more congratulations and well done to the horsepower and the $1.1 million coming from Mark Lane and Ryan Kirby. Their Vita Nova Recovery Facility is a new addictions treatment center set to open as soon as maybe mid-July. They're still negotiating with the government as to whether or not they'll be able to accept anyone registered under the MCP program and then consequently bill MCP. They've got a built-in detox center in the facility, so you can come right off the street into detox at Vita Nova and then into a program that will treat you until you, quote-unquote, recover. Of course, MCP has to cover these costs. And bravo for Mr. Lane and Kirby for doing exactly what they've done with this 54-bed facility. We see the problems growing. So whether it be the concept of a voluntary treatment, which I think is highly problematic, and or just access to more and more addictions treatment help. If you want it, we have to make sure that you can get it, and get it in a timely fashion. Not the staggered detox and then another way to get into a 30-day program and the potential for relapse. So we spoke with Mr. Lane on the program, but I think it'll be also important into the future to talk with Mr. Kirby. He's got lived experience in this realm, so there's obviously some passionate background as to why he's involved at that level. Anyway, Terra Nova, the Peninsula's recount delayed another couple of days. They had to shut off the water in Marystown while they build a chloride treatment facility, apparently. So we'll know the results of that 12-vote difference between Liberal Anthony Germain and Conservative Jonathan Crowe by tomorrow, we're told. There's been a bunch of recounts across the country, and this 12 votes, will it go one way or the other? I'm not so sure. A couple of quickies while we wait for the phone to ring. C. Jordan Brown is not going to run again, and this is not new news. But that just leaves Jim Dinn, the leader of the party, the member for St. John's Centre, as the only NDP member of the House of Assembly. Then you look on the federal front, and lost official party status, only have 7 seats. No privileges in question period, no research funding coming from the federal government. There's a future for the NDP. There should be. There's a place for the NDP. But how they recover on both fronts is going to be a tall task. And I do think, the reason I think there's absolutely a place for the NDP is I don't think we're very well served if this boils down to strictly 2 parties and only 2 parties that have any chance of getting elected, have any chance of serving or sitting in the seat of government. So I think that's a big conversation that you know full well is ongoing inside the ranks of the NDP provincially and federally. I got a bunch of other ones that I want to talk about, but we're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. That means you're in the queue to talk about whatever's on your mind. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 1. Jackie, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. I called in a couple of days ago. The last person that you had on was speaking about the Waterford Hospital. I called you about a year ago. I'm having trouble with my daughter. She has been diagnosed with 2 really serious mental health conditions. Post-traumatic stress disorder is one of them, and the other one is borderline personality disorder. Now, this is going on for about 7 years. We've been going back to the Waterford Hospital constantly, like with our daughter. And it's almost like we bring her in one door, and as soon as we go, Nobody tells us that they're going to do an assessment on her because she goes to the PAU unit. She's in the PAU unit. They tell us, okay, you can go on because it might be a little while before she gets assessed. We're not even up to the Aqua Arena, and they got her discharged. The girl has a serious drug addiction. She hurts herself. She damages other people's stuff. She's constantly going off her head. And this is a young girl that grew up, never had any issues. I called you about a year ago, maybe, about the same situations, and it's actually getting worse. She's been in the Waterford Hospital for oh my God, lots of times. It's just that I don't know how to deal with, because in order for them to treat her for post-traumatic stress disorder and her borderline personality disorder, she needs to be sober. She needs drug rehab. Patty, she's not making any decisions. Not one decision is she making at this current time that is right or good for her or anybody else. Our family has been really, really desperate for help. I mean, desperate. I've called politicians. I've called a lot of people. The problem is the Waterford Hospital won't treat her, even though she really should be treated, because she's not cooperative. Now, I don't know what to do. I already told them that one time she was in the hospital. I said, if you let her go, something really bad is going to happen to her. And it has. She was sexually assaulted and beaten by a sexual predator. They met each other at the gathering place, and that was it. It went on from there. This girl has a Bachelor of Nursing. She had a great life. Something stressful happened to her, and she went and sought help at the Waterford Hospital. Now, I can tell you how I feel. I don't know how other people's experiences were, but I'm hearing that a lot of people are having the same trouble that I'm having. I just don't know where to turn with it all. I'm afraid, especially now knowing that most of the drugs on the street are pretty pure and pretty powerful. Fentanyl, profentanil, all these big, heavy drugs. Now, 2 weeks ago, she was found in a path, passed out. So they brought her to the hospital. 2 days later, she's out. This girl is a danger to herself. She's a danger to others around her. I mean, she's been caught by the police in the middle of the night walking the streets with a knife on her, and they asked her, why does she have a knife on her? And she said, for protection. And they understood that part of it. But the protection that she needs is getting sober. She needs to be in the Waterford Hospital, getting treatment, getting away from the drug scene, getting off the drugs. And what I'm hearing is, if they don't agree with it, well, it's never going to be successful. Patty, the way I feel about it is that if you don't try, then it will never be successful. If you just gave up on her because she's a drug addict and a drug user and she's not cooperative, I don't understand why, if she's hurting herself, and I mean, even in the hospital when she freaked out and threw stuff around, and one of the trays came back and hit her in the face. She goes in the hospital and she comes out sometimes looking worse. She bangs her head off concrete buildings. She can't have a mirror because she hates herself that much. She puts her head through the mirror. And being diagnosed with borderline personality disorder is a very difficult disorder. It's terrible, and it's drugs make it worse. And now she's got post-traumatic stress disorder from being beaten and sexually assaulted. I just don't know where to turn to. I don't know what to do. I'm after doing everything you can imagine. I mean, I even threatened to chain myself onto the Waterford Hospital, and that was the one time they actually did keep her in for a couple of weeks.
When a reference is made to she's uncooperative, that's really jumps off the page for me, because by and large you would think that folks who are struggling, whether it be solely with a mental illness, whether it be solely with a drug addiction, that cooperation and good decision making is probably not a normal part of their day-to-day life. So being uncooperative is not a reason why someone should be turned away from getting the help that they obviously need based on what you just told us. So that much I don't quite get. I mean, this is not about whether or not every patient is going to be easy, whether or not the healthcare professionals or the triage staff have the patience to deal with someone who is quote-unquote uncooperative. That should have no relevance in so far as trying to get some help.
It does, though, Paddy.
No, sure. Well, obviously it does.
The drug addiction part, and now, of course, with the other things she got, it makes it even worse. But the drug addiction part makes you make decisions that are definitely not good for you. And she don't know any better when she's on drugs. But that's my problem, Patty. Okay, so she's got to go down and one time to give her a number, she had to call every morning at 8 o'clock in order to get into rehab. After 2 days of doing that, you can forget it. I'm lucky to get her to do it for the two mornings, and everything in her life is falling apart. Now, the only thing she do have housing. I fought her a couple of years before she got out of Waterford when she was assaulted. I fought tooth and nail to get her housing, and we got her housing. But the problem is, Patty, yes, it's great to have a roof over your head now. She's not down to the gathering place anymore. She's going back and forth to the gathering place now because she gets her drugs and she goes down and trades it for crack cocaine. So, she's not cooperative, and she's acts out in violence. I even asked him, when I went to the Waterford Hospital, I asked the director of the PAU unit, what do you got to do to get somebody in here and keep them in until they're actually not hurting themselves, not hurting others or damaging other people? What do we have to do? And she said, there's nothing you can do. It's up to her. She has to be cooperative. My daughter's going to die. I know it. She's going to die on the street. She's really, really, really in a bad way. And we know it. We're coming to terms with that she's probably one of those people that are not going to make it through. But every time she's brought to the Waterford Hospital, every time we call the crisis unit, all these things that they got, it's just a waste of time. She's not cooperative. She's there. She don't want to get off drugs. And it's not that she don't want to get off drugs. It's when she tries to get off it, all these physical and emotional things happen to her. And she can't get any further than that. And she do ask for help sometimes. I bring her down to Waterford Hospital. Like I said, we're not even over to the Aqua Arena to go get coffee. And They got her gone. She's after freaking out in the middle of the night when they had her in for 3 days. The next day they let her out. The doctor comes in and determines, she's fine. She's not going to hurt herself. She can go. And that's the same thing that psychiatric nurse told me only a couple of weeks ago. She's not going to hurt herself. I said, she was found there a week prior to this and at your place, passed out on the ground. Okay. People had to bring her in. And I said, I don't know who has the power or the authority to make sure she stays until she starts making these decisions and then they can treat her for her other two conditions. And the other two conditions just make it really, really, the drug addiction. She's one of those that are really, really, really in a bad way.
It sounds like a terrible set of circumstances, undoubtedly. Jackie, I'm sorry to hear all of this. And insofar as where to go next, it's a good question that I don't have an answer to, and I wish I did. Just very quickly before I do have to go, how old is your daughter one more time?
She's 34 years old. She went to and got a Bachelor of Nursing, and something happened, Patty. I don't know what happened. She had a breakdown, and she was seeing a psychologist, but of course, she'd have to pay for it out of her pocket. She got the first couple free under her insurance plan. But the thing is, Patty, I don't know what to do. None of us, and this is not just making her health bad. It's making me, my husband's health bad, her brother, and my parents.
I understand.
We are worried to death.
I would imagine you are, Jackie, and I wish I could do something to try to get her some of the help that she obviously needs. I do have to go, and I'm sorry about that, but the time on the clock is sending me off. But I wish you well, Jackie. Keep me in the loop.
Thank you, Patty, and I will.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
The same to you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Let's take a break. We'll get back. Jason's in the queue to talk about the Western Driving School. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Jason, you're on the air.
Hello, Patty.
Hi there.
I called you a nice while ago now talking about trying to get a book for the driving test, and they don't give them out anymore. You have to do it online.
I remember the call.
I had the book printed off. It's not cheap. It's 15 cents a page. So you're looking at over $55 just to have it printed off. So I wanted to do the Western Driving School to make it a little bit cheaper on insurance, and you get 6 months your license earlier. So I phoned them and I asked them, and it's 25 hours in a class, but you have to do it on a computer. It's from 5:30 till 9:30, and that's almost $1,000. And they'll give you 10 hours of driving in their own car, and you can do the road test with their car.
Right. Just back up to the classroom for a second. Did you say it costs $1,000 to take the classroom portion?
Yes, $890.
Okay.
And that's for using their car for 10 hours of driving, too, right?
Okay.
Now, I wouldn't mind doing it online, but there is nothing open. Like, I used my friend to do the test, and I passed the test, not a problem. So when I went to go to the driving school, there is nothing open. Like, she does her own work on her computer, too, so I can't be bugging her Monday to Friday for 5 hours a day for her computer, especially at around supper time, too. I don't want to be bugging them. And I wanted to do it at the library, but there is not a library open either at 9:30 p.m. So I was wondering, is there another way? Like, how come they don't have, like, say, 10 people, 12 people, and then they have a class in a classroom? They said, no, they don't do it because of COVID. So if I borrow their car for 10 hours, where are they sitting there 2 feet from me?
Yeah, it's probably a little bit of a stale argument these days, as you can't do something because of COVID. Look, I mean, it's not going away. Neither is the seasonal flu. Neither is a bunch of other bugs associated with just the normal cold. So, I mean, that argument is getting a little bit stale for me. And people will be mad at me for saying it, but I'm going to stick with it. I think that's not really much of an argument these days. Because the point you make is right. I mean, if you can spend 10 and a half hours in the car with me, then maybe, just maybe, we could have a classroom that would house 35 school-age children with 10, 12 people. Even if you're separated by whatever number of feet, to give people a sense of comfort, there's no real solid reason why you can't have in-person class today, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, yeah, that's right, because like you said, the high school and low school, they're all gone back to school. That's all back in school, but it seemed like they want to do it all on the computer.
Yeah, I mean, the universities are back, all the trade schools are back, everyone's back.
Yes, and the bad part about it is, like, well, how come they can't have it when the libraries are open? Like, say, 2 till 5 or 6 or something like that, right? Why do they have to have it at 9:30 when they know that there's no libraries open? Is
the classroom portion self-directed learning, watching videos, answering questions, or do you actually have an interaction with a instructor who's standing in front of their computer screen delivering a class? Because when I went to driving school, of course, that's a while ago now, is we sat in a class up in Churchill Square, and we had an instructor, and we went through the paces there. But so is it self-directed, or is there an instructor given live tutelage?
As far as I know, she said I had to have the computer and I had to have a camera. So I guess it would be where they can see you and you can see them, I guess.
I guess so. Yeah, sounds like it.
All right. So they make it really, really hard for a person that doesn't have a computer or the internet, right?
Yeah, I mean, we generally try to follow up on things like this. So myself and Dave will reach out to the Western Driving School to see if there's any argument beyond a virus to not be able to offer in-person, in-class, as part of their overall approach to getting people trained up for their driving test. We'll see if we can get them on the show, Jason. No problem.
Yes, because, you know, they should just bring back SARS and H1N1. Like, this here one is sticking on everybody, and it makes it hard, right?
Yeah, there's going to be endless examples of things that we can pass along, things we can contract, and that's never going to go away. We can try to do what people what people think they want to do for their own self-protection. We can have reasonable public policy, but leaning in the May of 2025 that COVID's why we can't have in class at the Western Driving School, it sounds a little bit much to me. I think we're on the same side of this conversation, but we will invite the representatives of the Western Driving School on the show. No problem. Hopefully they accept.
All right, thank you very much for trying.
I appreciate your time, Jason. Stay in touch.
You have a great day.
You too, pal. Bye-bye. Bye. Yeah, look, I mean, let's be honest. Some of the pandemic restrictions, they were obviously there for a reason, but they became tiresome for many. And to continue on, I mean, just look no further than the fact this office is reopened in full. The kids are in school. The university is open. College of North Atlantic and other vocational schools right across the province and the country in the world are, for the most part, wide open. Back to business as close to normal as people can get it. So I think it's probably a good opportunity for the Western Driving School to come on the show here. What do you think? All right, should I take this break on time and come back? John, you're next to talk about the Terry Fox Memorial. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. John, you're on the air.
Yeah, Paddy, I didn't realise my phone come up as John, but my name is actually Barry, and on the bill for some reason, and my phone come up. But anyway, my name is Barry.
I'll go with Barry.
Anyway, I'm calling about. I'm sort of tangled up with the tourist industry. I spend a lot of time around tourists, and I called last year and talking about directions to get to the Terry Fox Memorial. I've been talking to a lot of tourists up around the Geo Centre, down quite a bit. I got down there. Everywhere I go, I comes across tourists and I said, "Did you visit the Terry Fox Memorial?" No, we didn't. Where's it to? And I had to explain to them where it's to. Now, someone went through a big expense to put the memorial down there, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's down on the bottom of Temperance Street. However, the city didn't do a good job putting up signs to direct people there. As far as I know, I see 2 signs and they're right on top of the memorial. And if you blinked, you'd never see them. Anyway, I drove down Temperance Street just last week, and at the bottom of Temperance Street, there was 4 people. 3 made the right-hand turn, and 1 stopped and took a picture, and the other 3 just walked away towards South Paul. So I stopped and I said to the lady, "Did you visit the memorial, Terry Fox Memorial?" "No," she said. "Where's it to?" Well, I said, "You just took a picture of it." "No, I took a picture of the harbour." Well, I said, "Just look down there at them tall trees. Just look to the right of it. That's the Terry Fox Memorial." "Oh my God, I didn't see it." Now you can be right on top of it and still not see it.
You're right.
So anyway, I said, "You stay there and I'll send your friends back." So I hauled up 4 or 5 bus lines. I said, "Your friend wants you to go back. You passed the Terry Fox Memorial." And they said that we didn't see it. So they went on back to have a look at it. So, like you say, down Coles Cove this last week, every time I see a tourist, I make it a point to stop and chat with them. Anyway, I said to the people, 3 couples, I said, "Did you visit the Terry Fox Memorial?" And the young woman, are probably about 25, "My God, no, where's it to?" Right excited, and I go, "Wow." So anyway, the other fella said, "Why is Terry Fox?" He said, "Where would it be to?" He said, "I didn't know Terry Fox started his run here." Now I said, "Where are you from?" He said, "Ontario." Well, I said, "Oh yes, Terry Fox started his run here in St. John's." And the young woman said again, "Oh, where's it to?" Right excited, and I said, "My God!" And then I started to explain to her, "Come down over Signal Hill." We just come down Signal Hill. Anyway, no, we didn't see it. And anyway, Buddy said to me, he said, "That's her claim to fame." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" "Well, she went to a high school in Ontario called the Terry Fox High School. And Terry Fox's name is, every Canadian knows who Terry Fox is right from a very young age. They're taught about him in school, and every September we celebrate his walk and his run. But tourists are coming here. They can't find. I'll be up on Signal Hill quite a bit, the Geo Centre quite a bit, and it's always full. But anytime I pass the Terry Fox Memorial, there don't be nobody down there. You don't know where it's to. And I'm looking for the city to put up some signage directing people how to get to the Terry Fox Memorial. Now, there's 2 signs I found in St. John's. They're 6 inches high, 30 inches wide. One is on the top of Temperance Street, and the other one is down by the South Paul.
That's right. So that's the one I'm familiar with.
Right there, they're the 2 signs. And if you don't once you get down to, we say, Cochrane Street, you're looking at a South Paul. Tourists don't go down there. They runs up the hill and goes along Duckworth Street. Now, when you come down over Signal Hill, this is St. Joseph's Lane, I think it's called. When you come down over Signal Hill, there's 2 city signs. One says downtown St. John's. When you're at the bottom of Signal Hill at the stop sign, downtown St. John's, straight ahead, so send you down Duckworth Street. And then on the bottom of that sign, there's Quite a Village. Straight ahead, send you to Duckworth Street. Now they're sending people away from Quite a Bit. If you just took a right on that stop sign, you'd end up Quite a Bit Road down Forest Road, but they're sending you down Duckworth Street. Now, if you had a sign on the bottom of Signal Hill, Terry Fox, next left, you'd have half a chance to find it. But anytime I go down Signal Hill, and I'm up there quite a bit, I drive transit, and there's a line up on the bottom of Signal Hill. There's so much traffic coming down. And nobody goes down Temple Street. You wait till you get through to go straight across to downtown St. John's. Now, Terry Fox is such an important part of Canada. We got a Coast Guard ship named after him. And now this year, I don't know if it's in circulation yet, or it's going to be in circulation. Terry Fox's image is going to be on the $5 Canadian bill. And Newfoundland or St. John's don't do very much to celebrate him. So when you're at the airport and people are coming in, they don't even know Terry Fox existed, the foreigners, but we should do more to promote our tourism with Terry Fox.
I don't disagree. So, I mean, there wasn't that long ago, people were asked to vote for who's the greatest Canadian of all time, and Terry Fox came out on top ahead of someone named Tommy Douglas, widely credited as the father of universal health care in the country. So, yeah, Terry Fox and the relationship to this province is very real. Of course, everyone can see in their mind's eye the visual of him dipping his artificial leg into the ocean to begin his marathon of hope. And, of course, the first time Terry Fox was here, he was participating in the 1977 Canada Summer Games. That's kind of apropos of nothing, but he did participate in those games, and here we are on just about another games coming to town. But you're right. There's the only sign that I'm actually familiar with is the one by the salt pile, and unless you're absolutely got an eagle eye and looking for it, you probably don't see that either.
No, I'm watching people pass it every day. However, I think St. John's and Newfoundland and even Newfoundland and Labrador, because you can't leave those guys out, we should do more to promote Terry Fox. He's a memorial. And I'd even go as far as saying, St. John's, if you're in the St. John's airport, there's no mistaking you're in St. John's airport. I'd like to go as far, and only because my son brought it up when he was 5 years old. He said, Dad, who's the most important Canadian ever? I said, I don't know. He's dead. I think it's Terry Fox. And I said, I think you're right. Anyway, I'd even go so far as, how does this sound? I'm after running across people, the Terry Fox International Airport. When you're in St. John's, everyone knows you're in the St. John's International Airport. So why don't we give it a famous person to name it after? Because there's airports all over the world got people's name on it, and who would be greater?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I get an email, I'm going to say once every single week since John Crosby died, suggesting that we name the airport the John Crosby International. So that's interesting that you made mention of Terry Fox and his name on the airport here, because I tell you, you can set your watch to it. Every single week, the same person sends me an email about the John Crosby International Airport. Which I don't know, I'm not going to say is a good or bad idea, but it's interesting that you put Terry Fox there. Anything else very quickly, John, before I do have to get to the news?
Yeah, well, the only thing is Terry Fox will be remembered forever and a day. Forever and a day. The rest of the time, Terry Fox is going to be remembered. So St. John's and the politicians, all them politicians should get on the ball and get something done. And maybe, something I'd like to throw out to the residents of Newfoundland and Labrador. What do they think? Think about it, and what do they think? Why not celebrate Terry Fox? And I would have liked the Mall 1, would have been the Mall 1, Terry Fox Mall 1. However, when he come up with the Mary Brown's Mall 1 or Convention Center, I almost thought that was a joke.
Well, no, I mean, that's a matter of putting your money where your mouth is. So that was $1 million Mary Brown Center. So, yeah. Yeah,
there you go. Right. So this is all about advertising, but tourism, I got to tell you, it's going to bring more than $1 million.
Oh, of course it is. It's a massive growth industry. John, I'm late for the news. I'd appreciate your time and your call. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. It should be easier to know where that monument is, though. That much, 100%. And it's interesting you talk about the Terry Fox statue. It was created by Lubin Boykov, the same guy who made the Amelia Earhart statue, which I guess is still missing. Let's take a break. When we come back, plenty of time left for you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 4. Good morning, Perry. You're on the air.
Good day, sir.
Good day to you.
I just want to speak out about the people that's fighting depression. I mean, I've been seeing psychiatrists over 22 years, more. I went to and asked for help. He told me go and find their doctor. So I got clear of him. I winged myself off what he was having me on, which was it will put me in another world. Now I can't even find a family doctor. I can't even find a doctor at level to talk to me, to find a problem, to help me out. And you could make all the phone calls about more extra money for depression, and all the government out there, all of them are doing just lying. There's nothing out there for you. You got to fight it yourself. And I've phoned on MHA or federal, provincial. It don't make a difference. Like I said, there's something wrong with the system. It's really broken, and you can't talk to no one, or they're too busy, or they don't want to touch the subject. I mean, why don't they take my paycheck and think about it then? The secretaries, all the same. They've got no sympathy. They got no morals.
Just a quick question. Perry, who are you? You say you're calling, so you mentioned your MHA, and who else are you calling in an effort to try to find a family doctor? Because there's a process for it that I can help you with.
Yeah, I went through this process that I got a counselor. That's the only thing I got good in my life for the keep me going. And she gave me the papers, and I've phoned and I signed up. My wife signed up and there's still nothing. We got nothing. I mean, I live in Springdale area. We have 4 clinics in Springdale, and never one of them's working. So what is the point? If you have to have 4 clinics and never one's working, what is the point anymore? They even wasted money to build that big clinic in Springdale. We got near a hospital. We got a hospital an hour and 15 minutes away. And I've been on 2E 5, 6, 7 times. That's no help. They will not fight for the problem that you got. They won't touch it. They won't talk about it. They won't do nothing about it. The system is completely massacred. There's nobody going to win. There's nobody going to get help. And then it comes to the desperate need of somebody taking their life for... my opinion, they're ignorant of people supposed to have the technology and the knowledge and training, and they don't use it and do it to people who need it. I don't know why that they're in there and getting their paychecks, and I'm home suffering, and now they'll pay me bills because I can't work because the doctors messed me up that bad, surgeries. So they send me home and enjoy the rest of my life. So now, the rest of my life, I got to punish because somebody else won't do their job. And we got people out there that's 90 years old as a psychiatrist. I mean, what is it? When is we go to Newfoundland or even in Canada, we're going to smarten up and do something right? I mean, people got the knowledge, and you speak to them about, well, you got your feelings, your things about it that way. That's not the point. The ones that need help is not getting it. Don't matter whether it's social assistance or anything. It's all the same. We got no workers to talk to on social assistance. We don't talk about that. I'm sorry, hang up on you. Where do common sense come in, and where do all these people get their paychecks and go to work every 5 days a week and could live with themselves?
Perry,
they're doing nothing.
So you're trying to get a family doctor, right?
Oh yes, most definitely, sir.
Okay, so the only real way to do it, as opposed to calling your MHA or calling different clinics, is to register, like I did, with Patient Connect. They will eventually connect you with a family doctor. It won't be a flip of a switch. I was on the list for almost a year before I got mine, but that's the only way that you can get one, necessarily speaking. So you really should start there. It's not going to solve everything or anything today, but it's the beginning to getting a family doctor. So have you done that? If not, I can help you with the information.
I haven't done that, sir.
You have not?
I have.
Oh, you have? How long have you been on the list?
A little over a year.
Yeah, I was around a year before I got through.
But like I said, what do it take? I mean, as for depression, too. Where do we help? I'm very, very sick. I go through a lot of pain, a lot of cold and everything, and the only support I got is my poor wife. I got no support to the doctors that go to them. They just shrugs their shoulders and says, "No, there's nothing wrong with you." I don't know where else to turn. I mean, I've been one side of the island to the other side of the island, see specialists. I'm that messed up that nobody wants to touch me. So where do I come in with my life, and for the depression, and for the sickness I got, the messed up surgeries? Nobody answers for the messes they make. And like I said, to get financial help, provincial or federal, they won't help you. So, like I said, I punish to try to pay me bills, just like anybody else. But like I said, when you're getting roughly only $16,000 a year, how can it ever happen? And that goes with depression.
You did say that you do have a therapist, though, Perry. Did you mention that?
A counselor.
A counselor. Okay. And so what you need is a referral to a psychiatrist. I'm just trying to get all of this straight because I know that you're hurting and I know that it's hard to get to where you want to go. So that's the ultimate goal here. Family doctor, referral to a psychiatrist. That's what you need.
Yeah. She can't do nothing about it. Or counselor can't. She's only there just to talk to me. And I'm only supposed to see she 11 times. And she done something for me about that, so I could see her every now and then. 11 times, and I'm supposed to go home and crawl me head in the house and stay there and don't come back no more. That's our system. It just stinks.
Yeah, there's a lot left to be desired. No question, Perry. I'm going to put you on hold. Dave's going to give you one piece. Can you do that for me, Dave? I'm going to put you on hold. Dave's going to give you a resource that might be of help as well. So can you do that?
Yes, I can.
I will. You take good care, Perry. All right, let's put Perry on hold. Dave will give him that contact. I don't have it in front of me. Let's take a break. I mentioned this off the top this morning and several times in the recent past. We had Mark Lane on the show to talk about the Vita Nova Recovery Facility set to open mid-July. The co-founder of the Recovery Centre is Ryan Kirby. He joins us after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 5 to give more to the co-founder of the Vita Nova Recovery Facility, and that's Ryan Kirby. Good morning, Ryan. You're on the air.
Hey, Patty, how you doing?
Great this morning, thanks. How about you?
I'm doing good, thank you. I'm just parked down here on the side of the highway here now next to Vita Nova, where I have reception. So, yeah, I'm here to chat, man. Thanks for having me.
I'm really happy to have you on, and thanks for making time. Before we get into what drove you and Mark to do this and what the facility will feature, what it might be different from other facilities, I think your personal backstory is a good place to start. So share what you're comfortable with sharing, because lived experience goes a long way to understanding the issue, goes a long way to trying to create a solution to help.
Yeah, I mean, well, lived experience is basically why we're here, Patty, in that, when this property became available, I immediately had this idea, and it's based on the fact, that I went to recovery. I struggled myself. I struggled for a number of years, and it's because of the people who I had around me and, myself, knowing that I needed help. And when I admitted that, having the people there to lift me up and get me the help I needed. I'm very, very fortunate to have the people around me that I do and continue to have. But, we're in a place where not a lot of people can say the same that I can, especially people struggling. They don't have these outlets that I was fortunate enough to have. So, when Vita Nova hopefully comes on stream here next month or two, the plan is to be that support system from the moment you call till, years down the road. We have this plan for a continuum of care where we really want to help our clients far past the 6, 8, or 10-week program that we will offer.
So it's a much-needed 54-bed facility. So talk about how it's different than how we currently approach it, because there's a disconnect between being able to get a spot in a detox facility then versus getting a spot in a rehabilitation facility, those types of things. So describe how it's going to work at Vita Nova.
Well, Yeah, so actually, we're going to have, an all-in-one where, you can detox in our facility and then move directly into the main building for, a 6, 8, or 10-week program. Facilities that don't have a detox, you're required to, be clean or for a certain period of time before you can come in. And in a lot of cases, you lose people in that timeline. I know myself when I was in active addiction, if I didn't use for a day or two, I'm perfect now. I got this all figured out, when really that's not the case. So, having the ability to treat people immediately is so huge. And then, we're a bit different too in the fact, I think, with our continuum of care, where we plan on following our clients far beyond the program in the building. So that is something there that's, greatly needed, but a lot of facilities do not offer that. A lot of facilities you leave, you're given a piece of paper with a few resources, and there's no checkups. There's no one ever calling to see, how you're doing. You can tell, we can go and say that 500 people went through treatment last year, but, that number is useless if we, how many people are still clean, who's doing better, who's got a job now, all of these things that we want to track and be able to help people with. And then also in programming, when you're in our building, we have this holistic side of therapies that we're adding to programming that a lot of other places don't, in regards to, music, food, yoga, meditation, breathing, hot and cold therapy, hiking, all of these things, we want to get people out and we want to teach them, a new way of life. So I think that's a pretty a bit of a synopsis for you.
Sure. So inside the world of the continuum of care, so what will be offered on site insofar as medical professionals, doctors and otherwise?
Yeah, so in the building ourselves, we already have hired now, we have our managing director, Melissa Wells, who is just incredible, who has years of experience in mental health and addictions and who is so excited to get back into this field. We have Dr. Anthony Perrell, who is a young, energetic doctor who is here to help, who is highly qualified, has tons of experience, even as just a short period of time with a doctor. And then beyond them, we would have 6 RNs in the building, running continuum. We would have 4 to 6 social workers. We would have addictions counselors, and we will have peer support workers. Hopefully mixed in amongst that would be a bunch of lived experience as well within our staff. And then beyond that, then we would have counselors that would follow our clients beyond that. And we're still working with Melissa and Dr. Perrell to basically figure all of that out. I think it'd be great for one of them to come on and they can really describe our programming to you. So that's a bit of an overhead there, an overview of what our staff would look like.
Insofar as access to treatment, is there going to need to be some sort of referral process? Is it a walk-in? Like, how are people going to be available when you open sometime, hopefully by mid-July?
Yeah, Patty. So the goal here is to have universal access. We want to be able to help everybody, and so we're in discussions daily with NL Health Services, Department of Health, trying everything to get a contract with them. We feel like there are so many advantages to having a facility so close to home. And, ultimately that's the goal. You're going to be able to access it through private insurance, private pay, these other options. But ultimately the plan is here to be able to help every person in Newfoundland. So, we're like I said, we're working diligently with the government, and we're very optimistic and hopeful that before we open our doors in July, that we will have a contract with them.
I know you're not reinventing the wheel here necessarily, but the approach that you're planning at Vida Nova, and we know what the outcomes for relapse are for some of the current approaches and strategies we employ here, but the model that you're putting forward, do you have any research that speaks to how effective it can be for people to actually recover, to get the time to recover, to break down that time gap between detox and rehab? And so just all of that as a catch-all, do we know how much more improved outcomes are with your model?
Yeah, I think Melissa and Dr. Peril could better describe that. But, I can look at it from a personal experience in that when I needed help, I was able to get to a facility immediately. It was there. So, like, we talk about this window that, when someone, it's so hard to admit that you need help. So when you do admit that you need help, we need to have the resources to help them immediately and get them where they got to go. And it is definitely proven, I don't have the exact stats or anything with you, that when you're able to treat it immediately and you're concurrently treating the addiction, but also the underlying issue, like the trauma-based, what is driving this problem. When you're able to work on both of these at the same time and be able to access the help immediately, the chances of you succeeding are far, far greater. And then I also know that with this continuum of care, when you're being checked on weekly or biweekly, the odds of staying clean and knowing that there's someone there, to check in on you and that you have this support system, your odds go incredibly up for sure.
This is a bit more of a personal question once again. And, okay, so I know this is a passion project for you, so to speak, or a labor of love, given what you've experienced in your own life. On the dollars and cents world, because I know why you're doing this, and congratulations, bravo, and good on you. Insofar as yourself and Mark, a lot of your own money in this, using your own homes as collateral, how does cost recovery look? Because passion is one thing, but there's obviously reality between a relationship between you and your bank as well. So how does that work for you folks, for you too?
No, for sure. So, I mean, I'm like, through this being a social enterprise, we are going to be able to recoup monies that way. Now, we plan to reinvest everything back into the business once we get up and running. But, when we thought about this, we knew that this was not going to be an easy road, that it was going to be a big climb. I remember our first meeting with government. I'm pretty certain they thought, these guys are crazy. We're never going to hear tell of them again. And here we are 2 years later, just scraping by to get this place open, and that's the goal. It's a struggle right now, that's for sure, I will say. But we think that with getting a government contract to work with them, then we will be able to at least recoup what we put into this and be able to reinvest everything back into the business going forward.
Ryan, I appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for doing it. Good luck to yourself and Mark and all the staff. And let's hope that the ongoing negotiations with the government work out the way they should, in my personal opinion, given what we see and the growing numbers of people suffering from, in many cases, the death spiral of addiction. Appreciate your time. Thanks, bud.
Thank you so much, Patty. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. It's Ryan Kirby, co-founder of the Vita Nova Recovery Center. Let's take a break just about right on time. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Otto, you're on the air. Otto, you're on the air. Otto, you're on hold. Let's go to line number 2. Ed, you're on the air.
Good day, Billy.
Good day.
How are you making out?
I'm doing okay. How about you?
That's good. Not too bad. The reason I called is this. I called her, I think it was Tuesday, about somebody having a problem with the new facility over at the Health Sciences itself, the Mental and Addiction Center itself. After that particular point, apparently, which it's getting worse, the person has become suicidal after that point, which is not good. Now, I've been talking to medical professionals for quite a while now, let's say before 2020. And for some reason, which I can't really explain, it seems like our healthcare system is going further and further downhill for some reason. I don't know who's in charge of it as such, but obviously there's serious problems going on. Especially when you go from a large facility like the Waterford, even though it's very, very old, to a much lower reduction capacity facility itself, which is not adequate by any particular means in the region of Newfoundland or even St. John's. Now, I've been talking to healthcare professionals for a while, and for some reason, which doesn't make sense, the doctors and nurses and stuff like that, they want to help. They want to help their patients. They want to help their patients get better and healthier and all this. But for some reason, odd reason, they have been told by higher-ups in the healthcare thing to not help. Or if they do help, they will lose their license. Now, obviously, if a doctor or group of healthcare professionals want to help patients and are told not to do it or to lose the license, you know who the problem is. It's not the doctors, it's not the nurses, it's not the staff. It's the ones in charge if they're acting like that.
I'm sorry, what does that mean? It's the ones in charge? If
you have the ones in charge telling the doctors and healthcare professionals on the front lines to basically, if they want to help the patient itself and you want to set up something to help the patient, and are told not to do it and mind their own business, and if they do it, they will lose their license, then there's something seriously wrong going on there.
I'm not sure I 100% understand that. So you're saying that managers or folks in charge of operations are telling doctors if they treat a patient, they're going to lose their license? Like, I'm just not sure what you mean.
Okay. I've come across situations itself where the doctors want to set up a clinic or anything like that, or they are want to help the particular patients itself who need help. The doctors know what to do. They need assistance or whatever from either provincial or federal governments, and are specifically told that if you do that, there's chances are you will either have your license suspended or completely canceled.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds weird and sounds stupid, but that is what I've been told by healthcare professionals. So the healthcare professionals themselves they don't know, they're trying to get by. They know they got to get paid through the healthcare, through healthcare, no matter which way it is. But if they are being restricted by upper management to help the people out itself in the first place, then obviously the ones that are doing that and threatening their own doctors and nurses are the problems of the actual problem itself. You need people up in charge who want to help their patients, their doctors or nurses, who will take advice from their doctors and nurses and frontline workers in order to make the actual system better than what it is. If they don't take that advice, then the system is not going to get fixed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know where you're coming from here, but the concern that you voiced, like, does that actually happen? I mean, I know people who are doctors and nurses and psychiatrists and psychologists and social workers and pharmacists, and I've never heard anyone say anything like that.
Well, the thing is that I've actually talked to doctors and nurses, and they have been told that. If they open their mouth, they lose their job. They've been actually told that. Now, they will not come on open line and tell people that by any means, because they're afraid that if they know who the individual it is, then guaranteed they're not going to have a job anymore.
Which, I mean, I'm not going to push back necessarily, but I mean, the healthcare professionals, especially doctors, they hold a lot of the cards. They really, truly do. I mean, they've got huge amounts of power and leverage.
Yep, and they've been told in some cases to shut up and mind their own business. And that's an actual quote from a doctor. That's not a word of a lie. That they've actually been told to shut up and mind their own business. Now, I know it sounds stupid as hell, and it really is, but they have been told that.
Okay.
Which makes you wonder what the hell's going on.
Yeah,
really
I'm always wondering what the hell's going on.
I know that you're skeptical. I was skeptical too until I heard it from other doctors and nurses and other healthcare professionals. Until I actually heard it from other nurses, doctors, and healthcare professionals. Not a word of a lie.
Let me offer this and just see what you think. to me, that whether or not it's true, I don't know. But it also feels like a little bit of deflection. So it's a pass the buck on whose responsibility it is that one healthcare professional or another was unable to or unwilling to offer the support or the treatment or the diagnosis, whatever the case may be, that an individual needs. Kind of feels like they're blaming someone else.
Yeah, hang on one second. No, hang on one second.
I don't know. Ed, are you still there?
Yeah, I am. Sorry about that. But this thing, like if it was just one individual, they said you think it was a one-off. It's like, oh, maybe the person's full of crap and all this. But when you hear it from multiple individuals from different fields across the board in the medical field itself in different areas, then you know there's a problem. Now you know there's a problem. Problem is isolating where the physical problem is to an individual's causing this particular problem, right? So if our healthcare professionals are actually threatened to lose their job or their license or their medical certificate or anything else they have because they want to help a patient, there's something seriously wrong.
It's amazing to me if that actually ever happens that no one would have ever said that to me, because I can keep somebody their confidence and I've got a platform where I can speak to it. But curiously, of all the medical professionals I know, not once has anyone said anything of the like to me on that level or that front, which is strange. I'm actually going to ask the question directly. If they themselves or anyone of their colleagues has ever said anything like that or reported anything like that, because I'd just be curious to know a bit more. Ed, anything else before we say goodbye this morning?
Yeah, I thought the same thing. And specifically, they have been told that they speak out.
Okay.
They're gone.
Yeah, well, speaking out to me, that doesn't jeopardize them because I'm not going to rat them out. I'm not going to put their name over the airwaves.
Oh, no, I wouldn't either. But if their voice is heard, they probably know who it is, and all of a sudden they're fired.
Yeah, no. I mean, tell me, to speak to me directly off air, off the record. Right. That's what I'm saying, not to call and have to mimic or mask their voice. I appreciate the time, Ed. Thanks for making time for the program.
No problem. Now, if anybody, any professional out there who is thinking the same thing and knows the same information, please get a hold of Patty and get him that information so he can go through it, because I know for a fact it's true.
I appreciate your time.
You have a good night, Patty.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly plenty to be said inside the system. Look, for starters, there was once, and this not that long ago, and I don't know if it pertains to this particular conversation, but the province did bring forward and enable whistleblower legislation. So I don't know if that's actually directly the mechanism that we should be talking about here, but it's completely and utterly ridiculous that when you have people in positions of authority and elected officials and otherwise use the same buzzwords non-stop, transparency, accountability, and all the rest of it, surefire way for people to be transparent and to be held accountable is if we're able to hear from people who are, quote unquote, on the front lines, the boots on the ground, right? That know what's going on, understand the operations, understand the shortcomings, and should be able to, without threat of repercussion, even if it's anonymously through a whatever independent oversight committee in one arena or another, one facet of the economy, one facet of government or the another, because the only way we're going to make things better, and this is where politicians really have themselves fooled, if you are the party, the individual responsible for making positive change, you win. You win. If you're able and willing to come out and say, we've identified a huge problem, a huge disconnect between management and operations, and here's how we're going to settle it, here's how we're going to solve it, here's what the upside is to you, the tax-paying voting public, that politician can bank on re-election every single time. So the whole business about things swept under the rug until eventually they get out, because eventually everything gets out, unless people just do away with that silly mindset that, if we admit a failure, then I just put a nail in my coffin. I don't think the public thinks like that. I think the public thinks, you've identified the problem, you're willing to do what it takes to fix it, bravo. Right? Maybe. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. We had a call earlier concerned about the fact that there's no in-person classes for driving tutelage at the Western Driving School. The owner of the Western Driving School joins us on line number 2. And good morning, Kathy. You're on the air.
Oh, hi. I just wanted to address some of the concerns that the gentleman had called. I didn't actually hear it. Someone had called me and advised me that there was some issues with regards to how we offer our program.
Yeah, I can summarize some of the basics that you can speak to if you like.
Well, actually, your director sent me the clip, and I listened to it.
Oh, yes, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so one of the things is we changed during COVID to the in-class portion via Zoom. We had no other choice. We were shut down. And in order to keep the business open, as I just had purchased it after retiring from government after 31 years, so for us to stay open and to keep our business going, I had to do an alternate source to keep the business in operation. And there was a lot of legislation and policy that I had to go through in order to go online through the Department of Service NL motor registration specifically. So then when COVID was over, we remained online. I was a little bit skeptical first about going online due to my background. I was a previous driver examiner for the province in Corner Brook for 10 years, and I worked mainly at motor registration for most of my career. So we went online to do the in-class portion and we stayed that way because we're able to reach more students. We're able to reach from Corner Brook. We're able to reach people to the Northern Peninsula, Pasadena, Deer Lake, Southern Labrador, Port aux Basques, Burgeo, Isle aux Morts, all those areas that normally would not have access to a novice program. The novice program entitles you to get your driver's license within 8 months of your initial date of your permit. So you get your driver's license 4 months earlier. So we didn't stay online because we were in fear of COVID. We stayed online for the betterment for students to be able to avail of services that they normally wouldn't get. So the gentleman had alluded with regards to having the online sessions at 2 o'clock in the day. Well, we're dealing mainly with 16, 17-year-olds, and they are in school. So they can't avail of classes until after they're finished school and after supper. So we start at 5:30, and we end at anywhere from 9:30 to 9:40. We have to complete, under the legislation, 25 hours of in-class online Zoom program in order for us to maintain our approval with Motor Registration Service NL.
Okay, so reaching more students, whether it be up to GNP or otherwise, that makes sense to me. But I guess the same question could be asked of you by this caller earlier, is if you're trying to meet people where they are, and you might indeed have a captive audience of in-person schooling for the 25 hours versus a reliance online at a certain time of day, is there a reason why there's not an opportunity to do both? Because I'm sure plenty of people in and around the Corner Brook area would maybe prefer to be in class, whether it be they don't have access to a computer or whether it be the time of day where the classes are offered. So is a hybrid model not possible for any particular reason?
Well, first and foremost, there has been only two, and including the gentleman that called, that wanted it in person. Everybody else prefer it online. So, for example, during the winter months, December, January, and February, okay, you have March, April, you have bad weather. So, by doing it online, they don't have to travel. No one has to get out of their house. They can access the Zoom via their phone, iPad, tablet, computer, laptop, whatever the case may be. So if we had to go to each community, if we had to go to Burgeo, if we had to go to Port Basque, we had to go to Isle of Morts, if we had to go to, say, Kippens or Port-au-Port, Black Duck Siding, if we had to go to Rocky Harbour, if we had to go to Pasadena, that is not viable because we need to have too many instructors to be able to do all of that. So that's why we remained online. So in the last almost 6 years I've owned this business, we've only had 2 people that did not or could not do it online.
So just to be clear, because the caller said that he was told the in-person option is not available strictly because of COVID, so that is not the case, and nor was he told that. Is that what you're saying, Kathy?
That is incorrect. We went online due to COVID.
Oh, yes, I understand that part, but the continuation of no in-person opportunity is not a COVID-related matter, period, as you just described.
No, absolutely not. It's absolutely not. It's that I'm able to reach other students that would not be able to use and avail of the novice program, right? Such like, people from Southern Labrador in general, all the way to St. Anthony, from Rocky Harbour, from Norris Point, right to Rocky Harbour, people in Pasadena, Deer Lake, North Shore, South Shore, in Cornerbrook area. Then we got the, Port Basque area, Doyles, Cadre Valley, Isle of Mort, even Ramia. So, we're trying to be as versatile as we possibly can and stay within what we can do for the 99% of individuals who would prefer to do it online. Because they have a live instructor. Actually, there's 2 live instructors online, and the classes are not 5 days a week. Classes are Tuesday and Thursday evenings. They run from 5:30 to 9:30, and it's 7 classes in total for one session to get your 25 hours.
Have the numbers changed? I mean, it's obviously a long time ago since I sat in the classroom, because I thought I remember maybe 2 Saturdays of 6 or 8 hours each, and that was it for the classroom. So have we increased the number of hours required?
You're not permitted. There's legislation that each driving school has to abide by. So there's a maximum number of hours that you can do in a classroom per day. There's a maximum number of hours that you can do in a vehicle per day. So all of this is legislated by motor registration. And you cannot also do an in-class lesson and a vehicle lesson exceeding 6.5 hours a day. So there's legislation that each and every driving school has to abide by.
Oh, I would imagine so. I mean, it's a regulated industry, just like it is regulated to even operate a motor vehicle in the first place.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. And then with the cost, if you compare my cost for a 25-hour in-classroom and 10.5 hours, ours is $890, tax included. One of the driving schools in your metro area for that same program is the cost is $1,025.
Yeah, because when he called, I did pop up your website and look at the different programs and the different associated costs. Before I let you go, Kathy, and once again, this is a question based on ignorance, is he did mention, take driving school so that there's a break on insurance. I know there was when I was a kid. I know there was when my boys learned how to drive. What is that break?
Well, the break is, it depends on the insurance company. Okay, so you would have to contact each insurance company and see, once you receive a certificate completing the novice program and pass your road test. Each insurance company has different rates and different requirements. So some may give you 1 year driving experience, whereas some may give you 3 years driving experience.
Okay. Yeah.
So depending too on, your driving record. So everything is pertinent to your driving record as well, because you can have a driving record prior to even starting the novice program. So, for example, if you were driving an ATV on the road, right, prior to starting driving school, and you were ticketed with a summary offense ticket, then your insurance is going to be higher. So it all depends on your driving record as well. Because you can have, like I said, you can have a driving record before you turn the age of 16, or you can have a driving record before you do driving school.
Sure.
Right?
I mean, not to quibble, but it's not just my driver's abstract or my driver's record that counts when it comes to insurance, because we're all lumped into an actuarial pool. My premiums are up, no claims, no nothing, no problem, no accidents, no tickets, no nothing. So I know where you're coming from, but that actuarial pool is myself and others with clean abstracts are paying for other people's shortcomings. Anyway.
Well, the thing is, the way the insurance works now is that your insurance covers you, and their insurance covers them.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not none of this. Yeah, right. So that changed, as you well know, and you can understand. I have 4 vehicles, 3 vehicles here in Corner Brook, and a vehicle in Stephenville, and my insurance cost is well over $20,000 a year.
Yikes. That's a heavy bill. Kathy,
bill.
really appreciate when we have a caller with concerns, and I can't speak directly to it because I have nothing to do with the Western Driving School, but I really appreciate you making time for the program.
Oh, thank you so much and giving me the opportunity to be able to explain. And we try to help as many people as we can. And we do go over and above in special circumstances. So, this gentleman in particular, we did offer, to help him, set it up on his phone, to help him with his online. Because we have had many that is absolutely computer illiterate. Some people who can't even read or write do this novice program with success. So, I have 2 instructors that's teaching online. I'm in the background helping those that are struggling with technology. So each night we have 3 online with the program.
And good for the accommodations being made. Kathy, I'm off to the news, but thanks again.
Okay, you're welcome. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. There we go. That was helpful. Not so sure how it sat with the previous caller, but anywho, let's take a break for the news. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Ed, you're on the air.
Sir, how are you?
Okay, thank you. How about you?
Good, thank you. I just got a chance to cook the trout that we caught this weekend.
Lovely.
Waiting for it to get on the open line, but that's all right, Patty. What I called about is 2 things in regards to the highway. Number 1, the section between Glenwood and Lewisport Junction. Now, I know there's a lot of problems with our highway across Newfoundland, and especially on the side road, on the roads going down to the smaller communities. But that area, a couple of years ago, I think they put a covering over it. Now, it's all broken. Say there's big gaps. There's one layer of pavement underneath, and the other is a sort of like a hole. And, you're driving along there, and people have to maneuver around those. Otherwise, you're going to be banging your car, doing a lot of damage, or any other vehicle. I mean, something has got to be done with that section of the road. It's terrible, and I've heard a lot of comments about it. I mean, the dangers of pulling out to avoid a pothole is the danger of hitting another car, hitting another vehicle. Have you heard anything about that?
Absolutely. Just describe what you call 2 layers. So there was some resurfacing done on top of the old stuff, and it's broken apart. Just describe that one more time for me, Ed.
Yes, resurfacing is what I would say, yes. And the top surface has deteriorated in many areas. Like there's huge gaps, like it might be 20 feet wide, or more, or long. And so you go down into that gap, but when you bang your tire, people got a tendency to swing out to get away from those holes. So it's ridiculous and very dangerous as far as I'm concerned, because I've seen a lot of people swinging out and a lot of people really slowing down quickly to avoid those gaps in the pavement,
Absolutely. And for folks who are frequent travelers, they know where the potholes are. They are already prepped to swing out. So it's not like we have things inadvertently happening more often than not. It's people just plan the route. Like when I drive home today, I know where some of the notorious gaps are and the potholes are and the very deep manhole covers. I avoid them because I don't want to hit them. Same thing in your area.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right, and I'm just afraid. Look, we have enough crazy drivers on the highway passing you in the fog and rain at high speeds. And that's why we have so many accidents. We've got to get harsher laws or something in order to control those people. But at the same time, this has to be controlled by the provincial government. I know Mr. Hogan just got in, but something has to be done to fix that section of the highway. And, it's for the safety of the people that I'm talking about. It's difficult to do everything. I know we don't have billions of dollars, but we have to do the best we can to fix that. So on the other hand, in regards to safety on the roads, we have a moose hunting on the sides of the roads. You can go in 3 kilometers. I did it. My wife and I had 2 licenses. We didn't mean to get 2 licenses, but it just happened that way this past year. We hunted. We never got a moose, neither one of us. But I found the dangers of hunting on the highway. We went off on a lot of side roads, yes, and the railway bed. But when you're driving along and you're going slow, because, you're trying to see a moose. And if you think you see a moose, you sort of stop. But then there's big rigs on the road. I saw the dangers. I realized the dangers, and I had to be very careful. And I saw an area where one moose was shot right on the side of the road when I was out there. I didn't see the person that did it. I just saw the remnants of the moose right there on the side of the road. I think, yes, because of all of the moose that are coming to the side road, especially this time of the year. They are driving their young away. The big moose are driving the young away. But at the same time, in the fall of the year, that presents a very dangerous situation. And if they had said, moose hunting on the road, yes, but you have to go in 1 kilometer or 500 feet or whatever, 500 kilometers, or not 500 kilometers, I'm sorry, a half a kilometer. Off the road, because it presents dangers. When we, like me, I used to pull off and try to see a moose, and there's a big rig coming, but there's no room to pull off on our highways. So I would like to know, how people feel about this roadside moose hunting on the Trans-Canada. I had the area from Grand Falls, Windsor to Gander. That's a big area. But I never got a moose, but the dangers were there.
Yeah, I understand that. I had to drive in and out the highway last week, and you mentioned the moose. And we know that things like brush cutting and speed and time of day and fencing is all part of the moose protection for the motoring public. But it's the first time I had to travel out the highway where I first encountered the fenced portion. It felt different. I saw a couple of moose standing right at the fence, and inevitably they would have been on the road at some point. But then someone sent me a picture, I guess it was yesterday, about a number of moose on the other side, on the highway side of the fence, which obviously they're going to be able to get there at some point because the fence ends. So anyway, that just popped in my mind insofar as safety regarding moose.
Yeah, I understand, that we have, but something has got to be changed, like in regards to the regulations here. I would really what I phoned for was to get other people's opinions. Now, even the moose hunters, what they feel about this on the highway hunting. Because, I know that you're not supposed to shoot from the highway. But the thing is that you're pulling off. Big rigs are coming. Other vehicles are coming towards you. So there's always a danger of a collision. And there's always a danger of a collision with a moose, too, because we have a lot of moose coming onto the highway now. So I would like for other people to phone in and give their opinions on that and just see what they feel about it all, you know?
Happy to do it. I mean, the best argument here, I mean, and it's real. If you're talking about the damage to your tire, your wheel, your suspension, that's absolutely part of the problem. But the best argument anyone can make is how it compromises safety, in my opinion.
Yes, that's right. But I mean, that's a real. As far as I'm concerned, it's too dangerous, really. And I said, I wrote it on my return that I don't think we should have that, or some other. We should have some other way. And the last thing is, this is just a little kudos to. Ambulance drivers. I was up in the woods fishing the weekend, and I had some incident. I don't know what it was, but I had to get the ambulance come up 21 kilometers into the woods on a woods road, and they took me down, and they were excellent. And every time I had another incident some years ago, a different one, where I was in the woods and the ambulance came up and the Badger Rescue Squad came down. These people, you know, are excellent. They talk to you. They treat you like a human being. And, you know, the nurses and everything, when you go to the hospital, I have to give kudos. I know we have a lot of problems, Patty, with our system. We can't find doctors and everything else, but we have to praise the good and sort of try to fix the bad.
Absolutely right. I really appreciate the time, Ed. Thanks for calling.
Thanks very much. Have a good day.
The same to you, sir. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, there's a bouquet in the queue. I always appreciate that. Wind energy is also part of the conversation coming up, and then we'll speak with you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Otto, you're on the air.
How's Paddy?
Couldn't be better. How about you?
Oh, good. Thanks for taking me call, buddy.
No problem.
Wife is still in the hospital.
Yeah, how's she doing?
Doing good, boy. She got that auction at home. I'm trying to set that up now for her.
Okay.
A while ago, I was to a meeting, wind energy meeting, up to Glanville Inn. I'd say about 250 there. And everyone was dead against it, eh? But I don't hear no one on open line mention that. What happened to the West Coast? They were going to build towers over there. Do you want to build them?
Well, at this point, probably not. I mean, it's not dead in the water, I don't imagine. I guess you're talking about Port-au-Port Peninsula. But even the company itself stopped talking about green hydrogen, started talking about data centers. So until they've got, and this is right from the company itself, this is not me guessing, they said unless they have in hand power purchase agreements for a minimum 10 years, then they're not going to be able to proceed. And I imagine without that agreement, they're probably going to be hard-pressed to raise the money. So at this moment of time, it all seems like it's been pretty stalled.
Well, what I heard from that meeting up there, they got a lot of land towing from Cumberland to Carnival. Just imagine the geese and the tourists flying back from Pennsylvania Bay to Trinity Bay. Man, you picked up a lot of ducks now on the transmission line hitting the wires. Just imagine those towers, those big blades, eh?
It certainly will have an impact on the bird population. And, you know, it's interesting. The biggest issue for birds and birds being killed are windows. And I wouldn't have known that until I looked it up. And wind turbines are well down the list behind things like cats and windows and others. But, yes, there will absolutely be birds killed by the wind turbine blades, no doubt.
No, I don't hear them mention, but we had guys there, and they had orders from Germany. They said, what a beautiful country we got here, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm a trapper. Is I going to be stopped from trapping?
Well, there's going to be some changes into where people can go to hunt or to trap or to do a variety of things, absolutely, because there will be some dangers associated with getting too close to the turbine blades.
No, I'm a hunter. Moose hunter, caribou hunter, deer hunter. I'm a trapper. And someone going to stop me from trapping? I don't think so.
Let's go to line number 4. Caller, you're on the air.
Good day, sir, and thank you for taking my call.
No problem at all.
I'm hoping that the people involved with the Ministry of Health are listening to your show today, realizing the number of calls related to addictions and all kinds of different angles. What prompted my call today was I was listening to your show right from the beginning here, and there's a lady very early in your show who basically talked about living with a person suffering from drug addiction. And as I was listening to her and the frustration that she had with trying to get help for her child, I guess, I was just sort of reflecting on that not only is there limited help for the individual who is the addict, but there's limited support for parents and guardians and family members and so on who are actually looking for how to get assistance for their loved ones. I personally have friends who are basically going through the same situation as that lady who called in terms of living with an addict for over 10 years. And one of the big problems that that family faces that I see as an outsider looking in is the shame they feel personally, thinking that somehow it's their fault. And as a result, of course, they're trying to keep things in-house and trying to solve this on their own, which is something obviously they need professional help, but they're trying to cope with this. And this is leading to financial ruin for that family, as well as mental and physical health issues for the parents. And these health issues, Patty, are actually life-threatening. And that leads me to the question of, I guess, what happens when the parents are incapacitated or they're no longer with us, if they're unable to assist?
It's an excellent question, and I think an insightful observation. A couple of things just jump to mind here. You mentioned the embarrassment and trying to keep it in-house, and it's not for me to say, and I'm not trying to lecture anybody because it's a difficult life circumstance to navigate, but the more you insulate and isolate, generally speaking, things get worse. And we're hoping that we arrive at a moment in time where no embarrassment is required here. It's possible for anybody, man or woman, anywhere in the socioeconomic status, to fall prey to some of these addictions. So, number one, until we can kind of wrap our minds around that, because it's not your fault. Right? It's not anybody's fault necessarily. Addiction can happen to anybody at any time. Same thing when we talk about mental illness. So when you isolate yourself and you try to insulate the family from public perception of the family issue that's being dealt with, I don't know how they navigate it. And there's certainly no positive outcome can come unless you get completely lucky and you've got devoted loved ones who are there constantly to try to help you walk through it. But that's not available to everyone. And as you mentioned, what happens when that's no longer available? All of a sudden, you're absolutely swinging in the wind.
Well, these parents are often extremely devoted, as that lady this morning and as the people I'm sort of referencing in my own life. And the issue is that they're just not able to cope with how to solve this. So they continue to feed money to hope that maybe giving them enough money to get through the day with their addictions, etc. They're trying to repair their homes so that when people come, they don't look at their place and say, "My God, what's going on here?" These kinds of things. And these addicts can't look after themselves. So if they're left alone at any point in this, they'll ultimately destroy these homes, and they'll most likely invite trouble into existing peaceful neighborhoods. So I think that there's almost a case here for a mandatory kind of treatment. If a person has been maybe referred to the system several times and there's obviously a high level of addiction, there might have to be some time when the state steps in, because I guess sometimes the parents also have a guilt of, if I put my child in an institution or something like that that's dealing with this, there's a guilt that they couldn't solve it themselves, and that sometimes holds them back. So I guess I wanted to call in and just I was moved by that lady's call. I was moved by the fact that I have a friend who's in this situation, and I see the frustration they go to on a daily basis. So ultimately, this province needs I'll say, empathetic, accessible resources to help people who are struggling with addiction and to help their families. And as the lady said earlier, the treatment has to be in place until the addict is actually at a point where they can function again. And, I want to remind everybody there's a huge amount of collateral damage associated with an individual addiction, whether that's damage in terms of to the family or to, people who are victims of theft and things like that. But just this is something that the government has to really sit down and take a hold of and really try and figure out a better plan than we're currently using. Anyway, I appreciate the time on your call to voice my concern, and to all the parents and to the addicts themselves that are struggling. Please try to get help, as you said, from outside agencies, because I think that's the first step.
Yeah, that entire conversation about involuntary treatment, I've tried to read as much as possible about that, but what's fascinating is that it's been used by the government of Alberta. They've tabled legislation to make that part of the reality for Albertans. There's very little research to point to whether or not it works. And, when we consider what we're talking about generally is without committing a crime, being physically detained, and the concept of if you don't want treatment, forced treatment probably doesn't work. The one place where they have had some research associated with it is in the state of Massachusetts. And bottom line there, to summarize the conclusions, it didn't work. They actually saw relapses go up, overdose deaths go up. So I'm still trying to wrap my mind around how it could work with positive outcome, because if it's a good and helpful political tool, that doesn't mean it's a helpful personal tool. I'm really still struggling with how to figure it out.
Sorry, I'm glad you said that, because I wasn't aware of that, the research, Patty, and you're right. We have to have research-based solutions here. Like if it's shown that this isn't effective, then again, we have to uncover another stone to see if there is possibilities that are bearing fruit, I'll say, and thank you for saying that, because that informs me as well as somebody who has to find different ways for my friends.
I'm just most interested in what works. Whatever it is, if it works, that's good enough for me. And the research is very murky. And we've actually had psychologists on the show talking about that. They're the experts in the field. They've actually done the research and been part of the research. There's not enough there to say it works. And the one body that is there does not paint a very positive outcome picture. I really appreciate you making time for the show this morning. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks for the time. Take care. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. For those of you in the queue, stay right there. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back. Let's go to line number 5. Good morning, Dana. You're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you today?
I'm great today. Thanks. How about you?
Good, thank you. I'm on talk. Last week was Nurses Appreciation Week, and as you know, I'm living in long-term care now, and back last year when my mom couldn't take care of me anymore due to sickness, I had to go to Corner long-term care while I was waiting to go back to Fort Saunders. And I'd just like to say thank you to all the nurses and all the staff at the Boston place at long-term care, the Fort Florence Cornerborough. And I also like to say, when I moved back to Fort Saunders, Patty, the staff here, they're so unbelievable. The nurses, the LPNs, the PCWs, the recreation people, it's unbelievable. The cleaning staff, just everybody. They're so unbelievable. Because, I'm totally blind, and I had a stroke, and I need a lot of help, and they're unbelievable. And I just like to tell them how much I appreciate what he does for me, and how much I love them all, because they're unbelievable people.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, because, far too often when we see the reports coming from whether it be the Auditor General or others, it really paints a pretty dark picture sometimes about long-term care and personal care homes, when we do know there are plenty of good homes and plenty of good staff. We just need to identify where compliance is not met and where staff aren't behaving properly. But people like you're not alone.
I'm only 52 years old. It's unbelievable how they treat me or whatever. I couldn't pick a better place to live. Like I said, it's laundry, cleaning, it's everybody. They're number one in my eyes, and I love them all.
I'm really pleased to hear it. So what do you do at the particular home to occupy your time during the day?
Well, there's a recreation lady here, and she does different things, like she has bingo games with us and barbecue. She takes you for a ride on the bus, and I play my keyboard a couple of times for them, and she took it where I play music too, right? So, but they have a lot of nice activity there, and they guess we walk a couple of times a week with the fair. I mean, they're unbelievable.
I'm really pleased to hear that, Dana. And thanks for calling this morning. Anything else you'd like to talk about while we have you?
Yeah, I love them all, and they're my angels. And I'd like to say thank you to all my mom, what she done for over the years too. I got number one mom, Patty.
Also great.
God bless to all the wonderful nurses out there and staff at these hospitals, and the ambulance drivers. They're all unbelievable.
It's good to hear.
Warren Sanders off the number one in my books.
Good man. I appreciate your time, Dana. Thanks for calling.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Take good care. Bye-bye. There you go. You know, it is important. Look, when we have the conversations like we could and should with whether it be Denise Hanrahan and reports on the care facilities, whether it be with the Susan Walshes of the world, the seniors advocate, because we need to point out the non-compliance issues. We need to point out that operational standards need to be updated and modernized. We need to point out that there are issues of inappropriate or incorrect administration of medication and some of the verbal abuse and sexual abuse and other things that do happen. But what we try to balance here is to not paint a picture that's fearful or so bleak that people think that everything is bad and every home is bad and every staffer is bad, because we know it's not true. So striking that balance of making sure we get things right in every home with every staff member has got to be part of the conversation. But I'm glad that Dana called and others have called on the same vein to talk about the fact that, hey, there's plenty of good that goes on in many of these homes. So I really appreciate it making time. Let's go to line number 3. Mona, you're on the air.
Hello, Patty.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm the lady that called last week about my cat.
Yes, I remember. So Priscilla.
Priscilla, I don't have her back, Patty. I want my cat. I want Priscilla back.
Yeah.
Please help me.
I really hope we can help you. So if I remember correctly, Mona, Priscilla simply got away in Torbay Estates area, right?
Yes, I got PTSD, and she's a therapy cat. If somebody got her, please give her back to me.
So, folks, keep your eyes peeled one more time, if you can, for Priscilla.
Please.
Describe Priscilla, who I believe, if I remember, is a tabby, right?
She's a calico cat.
A little calico, right. So we'll keep putting it out there for you, Mona, and fingers crossed that either Priscilla comes back on her own or someone in the neighborhood finally spots Priscilla and we can make sure we connect you with them, and fingers crossed you get Priscilla back right away.
Thank you, sir.
You take good care. Keep us in the loop. Let me know, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. See you, Mona. And Priscilla is a therapy cat as well. So, you know, hopefully that little calico or somewhere still close by. So for folks in and around that area, it's the classic hope that you have a look like under your deck and behind your shed, places where a scared animal like Priscilla, the cat, the calico, might be hiding. So let's see if we can help figure that out. All right, I'm going to, Sean, you stay right there. I want to respond to Ed. Ed was calling about what is a public safety issue regarding the deteriorating pavement, specifically where he's talking about. And it's not that area alone. Of course, we know there's plenty of places where people do talk about the conditions of the road, whether it be beating up your wheels, your rims, or your suspension. And yes, the want for people who are familiar with where the potholes are, and they know they're going to swerve to avoid them. Why? Because they don't want to beat up the rig. Let's quick check on the Twitter box. We're VOCM Open Line. You know what to do. Email address is openline@vocm.com. This is indeed our final break of the morning. So when we come back, we're speaking with Sean, and then we're speaking with you. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 2. Sean, you're on the air.
Good morning, Patrick. How are you?
Not too bad, Sean. I have to put you on hold, see if we can't get David to organise a clean phone line. And once again, I'm not entirely sure what causes that, but apparently something they are working on, and hopefully that's resolved sooner than later. I don't know if I managed to get to this particular story off the top of the program. I meant to, but I probably ran out of time. Once again, probably a pretty good idea. So about $208,000 has been spent to build and produce a training module for staff in the restaurant and hospitality settings. One of the folks that helped design it, of course, well-known restaurateur Jeremy Bonia. Training and the turnover in that sector is fast and furious, and training comes with a cost, hours and monetarily speaking. So to know that there's a training platform out there which can really help employers and can really help bolster your resume if when you're looking for a job in that arena, this is a good idea. Look, again, just like personal care, long-term care, plenty of great restaurants, plenty of great servers. But the unfortunate reality is, yes, people will make comment on the food and the quality of the food, but they absolutely will also pass comment on the quality of the service. Far too often, though, the service isn't up to the standard that the food is. And I'm not trying to generalize here because, again, I just said there's plenty of good servers out there, but nobody wants to go to a restaurant or anywhere where you're dealing with a server or a cashier or a hostess or a maitre d' or whatever the case may be, to see someone who visibly doesn't want to be there. And then someone who's complaining about their job, or talking about what they were at last night, or complaining about Trudeau, or complaining about Polyev, or any of the rest of it. It just doesn't belong in that arena because nobody goes to the grocery store or the gas station or the restaurant to hear that stuff. It's just not part of it, but you hear it all the time. So this is probably a really good idea that they're going to launch this particular training platform, and good on the folks who got behind it. Let's see if we have a better line on 4. Sean, you're on the air.
How's that?
Better.
Good to hear your voice, Patrick.
Good to be on.
Yes, this kind of the road conditions are one thing, and they are atrocious in a lot of places. Like even Conception Bay South. I mean, as you leave Belarus area and head out towards Holy Road, it's just atrocious. I mean, people are swerving from their lane into the oncoming lane to avoid them. That's how treacherous they are.
Absolutely.
And I think when contractors do work on brand new homes, and of course all over the city and out this way as well, there are an awful lot of new houses out there, so they cut the line right across the road to connect up with other services, and it never goes back. It never goes back the way it is. I don't see that anywhere else in the country when I travel. It just seems like like I don't see those sudden bumps that you hit, and then of course the more trucks that hit them, the deeper they get, and then you're into all kinds of tie rod ends and sway bar links and all kinds of expensive front end issues on your car. And now these days you're talking not hundreds, sometimes it's a couple $1,000 depending on the damage done, you know. So I'd really ask the Department of Transportation and the towns and cities in our jurisdiction to keep an eye out whenever there are lines tapped into across streets, across roads, that it goes back the way it should, and then keep an eye on it, you know, because it is dangerous when people are having to swerve into oncoming lanes to try and avoid it. Now, they should come to a complete stop, but many people don't. The issue of moose, how many years have we been talking about this? We have some fabulous work done on a highway near St. John's, which is along the sides of the highway, with all the cutbacks, the brush and the trees and the cutback. Well, it's a great job. Hats off to everyone who's doing that. And then we have the moose fencing. But the downside is we didn't put an underpass, a nice big culvert underpass, so the moose can go back across the road without impeding traffic and get back on their migratory patterns. Instead, they'll go along the fence line, and then I just saw the sign up this morning saying that the moose fencing ends ahead. It doesn't say warning, moose crossing ahead, because that's what's going to happen. It just says, that the moose fencing will land in another kilometer, something like that. And I really think that we've got to be more specific and really put the big warning up there, because it is so dangerous. Like just moose fencing will end. It's not telling people that there's going to be moose, going along that fence line and running across the road. I've already had it happen to me once, and I just happened to be really alert early in the morning, thank God, and I managed to avoid them. But not everyone's going to do that, and then you can't replace a light, and you can't put them back in the same condition they were in before they hit the moose. Oftentimes they're damaged for life, as you know. So many are. So I'm going to ask that the province, through you, add in the most important feature of this moose fencing, and that is a moose crossing underneath in a culvert, large culvert, like they do that over in New Brunswick and other places across the country. Otherwise, you got to go above, and that's a big lot of money there. Just putting a culvert in is not too bad, and that way they can go under and come up the other side, and no one knows anything. Like there's nothing going to be impeding them. The other point too is at the end of the fencing that we have now, it just ends. Instead of the fencing going inland for maybe half a kilometer, to keep the moose in that area, it just ends. So I would think that they would have it so that it would deter the moose from coming out and kind of like drive them back inland rather than the moose section ending and then they can just start across the road.
Yeah, but how would that work? I mean, someone else mentioned that to me, because if there's a fence, the fence eventually, unless we're talking about a boxed-in area of woods, which I don't know how deep you'd have to go before the moose were able to just simply get on the outside of the fence. So what would keep them fenced in? Because it comes to a natural end, and you can see it plain as day.
Yeah. Well, back to your point, absolutely box it in there, box it to a certain point. So maybe you go in about a half a kilometer. At least then, like they're running across that area, and they're probably just going to go back to where they came from, or just keep going. But if we had the underpass, that would be the answer. And we don't have it, and we should have it in those fenced-in or fenced areas, and that way it'll encourage the moose to get where we want them to go, which is in underneath the culvert under the highway and then up the other side,
Yeah, you still have to funnel them in. I've seen some of these, like for instance out in Banff National Park, there's one of the biggest ones that I've ever seen because the amount of wildlife in the parks is unbelievable. So it's not just the underpass or the culvert under the highway. There is extensive amount of fencing and cattle gates to ensure that you funnel the animals where you want them to go.
Absolutely.
So it's not just as simple as building that underpass, because they have to, I'm not saying that you can put up signs, moose underpass this way, but they actually have cattle gates in a variety of places where folks on ATVs or bicycles, they can still get around, as opposed to the animals being able to get around, because a moose or a cow won't go over a cattle gate. They just won't, for the obvious reasons, because they can't go over the cattle gates. Yeah, and I don't know I hate to break it down to dollars and cents where we're talking about life and death or serious injury, but I have to think that there's an enormous cost with building an underpass. And the only reason I mention it is I wonder how much additional fencing could be done for the same amount of money to build an underpass in that area of fenced highway. At this point, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think it's well worth looking into. We've had a couple of moose already trapped inside the highway now, where they've come out from the fencing, and they were caught basically out on the highway, and that caused some consternation. I think it was last week, and we're going to see more and more of that. So there has to be an answer to that. We don't want moose darting down the middle of the highway because they're forced back out from where the fence was. So just my thinking. I know the people who are expert in putting these together could come up with a solution that can protect us all, or at least as much as we can. So I wanted to bring that up today.
And I appreciate your time. Thank you, Sean.
Okay, thank you. Have a good weekend.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, very quickly before we run out of time. So very likely tomorrow, 55,000 Canada Post workers will be on strike. The union did go to the corporation asking for a so-called 2-week truce so they can continue to negotiate. And Canada Post said, no, you have our offer. It's basically a take it or leave it. That's what it sounds like from Canada Post. It'll be the second strike in 6 months. The last one lasted 32 days. They eventually were legislated back to work, but it's going to cause another interruption, undoubtedly so. So I suppose if you've got something destined for the mail, probably just as well to sit on it or to choose an alternative delivery mode. And I got a ton of people saying we just, blow up Canada Post. It's all fine to say that. And, it's not that they don't deliver anything. 2.2 billion letters alone, not including parcels, in 2023. And in addition to that, there are plenty of people in the more sparsely populated areas of the country where Canada Post is the only delivery service. You can't dictate to FedEx or to UPS or anybody else to say you have to go that extra 50 miles to a farm where someone has a 20-mile driveway and deliver that letter. that parcel. So it's easy enough to say blow it up, but I don't think that includes the complexities of exactly the last mile of coverage that Canada Post provides. All right, good show today. Big thanks to all hands who support the programme, and we will indeed pick up this conversation again on Monday. Tomorrow morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. Talk in the morning. Bye-bye.